Yo, what's going on, guys? And today I wanted to talk about this little report that's coming from our man, Mr. Marc Stein of the Stein Line, that the Rockets are increasingly mentioned by multiple rival teams that are monitoring if Miami ever should want to trade Jimmy Butler, who is expected to go into free agency this upcoming year. So before we start today's video, I want to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you guys think of this, and do you think this is going to be something that's even going to be possible? So let's get right into that. And I think it's definitely going to be something that to keep an eye out for, as I think with more and more time, you look at this, you look at the roster that he said Jalen Green's contract is going to allegedly be a trade chip. You look at a guy like Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith. How do they fit in that picture? You also have Jayshawn Tate and Jeff Green. I feel like those are all contracts that could be used. Same thing with Jock Landale and Steven Adams, as I really do believe the core is Alperen, Sengun, Reed Shepard. I really love Tari Eason. Amen Thompson looks like there. Fred VanVleet looks like a guy that they would want to keep around. Who do you guys think and why is going to be around? But this is a very fun team that has a lot of potential. And when I, again, look at what they've been able to do over the last few years, especially with how the salaries are all set up, I think it's realistic to expect that this is going to be a team that hopes to, if come trade deadline, the Heat maybe are looking bad and the Rockets maybe are looking good and they want to take that step, kind of how we saw the Pacers did last year. Are they going to go ahead and, bite the bullet and make a trade? Because if you think, for example, let's put it this way. What if Jalen Green is awesome and they love Jalen Green? What if Fred VanVleet's awesome and they love Fred VanVleet? What if Alperen Sengun is awesome, they love him, and they look at Dillon Brooks and Jabari and they're like, hey, you guys aren't really fitting in, and they're like, what if we call up the Heat and we're like, Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith, and maybe you throw in one other guy. Tell me down below if you guys think, and you bring in a core of Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, Alperen Sengun, Jimmy Butler, and what you put Alperen Sengun at power forward and you start playing somebody else at center, or you put you take Jabari's spot and put Jimmy Butler there, and you put Amen Thompson or Tari Eason at the small forward spot. I feel like that's going to be something that realistically could happen. So that's where I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think of this news? Before we start to get into the Fanspo trade machine and all that good stuff, what would you guys do if you were the Houston Rockets, and why? As I really think this is a good team that has the ability to be an even better one by maximizing that. And I think when you look at a guy like Cam Whitmore, you look at a guy like Tari Eason, I think they need more minutes. And if you look at how the roster's set up and how the contracts are set up, I think it isn't an extreme thought to think that a guy like Jimmy Butler, if they trade for him and he tells them, I don't care for a max deal, I'll sign a 3-year $90 million extension because I grew up nearby, 30 miles away from Houston. Maybe that's what he wants to do, and that's going to be what he does. But I do think this is all definitely something that is up in the air, and I think it's dependent on how good the Rockets do. As the Rockets, obviously, the start of the season, they're a team that is 1-2. So this is either something they could do out of desperation or do out of what they think is right. But I want to hear your opinions. What's your opinion on this and why? But let's continue and pull up the trade machine. Like I said, let's pull up this Fanspo trade machine and just pull up what this trade would even look like. Fanspo still hasn't updated for this season. It looks like the trade machine, either way, it does have the right contracts. I just don't think, because they're showing the 24-25 season, I just think what they're talking about was, I believe, their PR, like those stats. Either way, let's go ahead. And Jimmy Butler this year, $48.7 million. He doesn't actually have to opt out. If he opts in, they could actually extend him. So it would be $48.7 million. Again, like I said, I think it would be like a Dillon Brooks. You'd probably assume Steven Adams might be thrown in there, as at this point, guys, I don't even know what to expect with Steven Adams, as it's just not going to be something that's going to be, a player that the Rockets would maintain. But I do believe that a guy like Dylan Brooks would be in there. The reason why I think Steven Adams would just work out there is he's an expiring contract, and salary-wise, this works. This actually works. And this is the deal that I think, if we looked at it, would be the most realistic. Now, maybe you would put some draft pick compensation, but you're giving them a former top three pick in Jabari Smith. You give them an expiring deal in Steven Adams, and then you give them a guy that kind of fits the Heat culture in Dylan Brooks. I just feel like right there, for a guy like Jimmy Butler, you're getting immense value, especially if you're just looking at this like, oh, he's going to be somebody who is going to be like the third option for this team. And again, we don't know what Steven Adams is going to look like. We haven't seen him since 2023. Now, draft pick wise, I would assume if they were to give up a pick, they would probably just be like, oh, here's our 2026 pick. I wouldn't assume it would be too many picks. Now, let's say if Steven Adams wasn't the guy, would you think it's a guy like, let's say in this deal, you send them 2 expirings, all right? And then in this, I'm trying to think of a guy that you would have them send you back. I would assume, you'd have to assume that at that point, if they're sending you 2 contracts like that, maybe they are including like a Trey Burks and an Al Burks. And I just want to take off I think keeping Thomas Bryant would be fine, but who's the other guy? Maybe like a Josh Richardson in this case, just to give him there. And then what we're going to do is take off the recently signed, just to make sure that this money works. Yeah, so the player option, you would have to wait a little bit, but they're saying the Rockets would win this deal. But in this example, you get rid of 2 expiring contracts, replace them with 2 other expiring contracts. And the whole thing, I still think the first deal is the better deal, is the more realistic deal, because they would just probably cut Steven Adams. And one might even argue, oh, if this really was the case, they did treat him, and if they were going to keep Steven Adams, maybe they just throw in Thomas Bryant, like I said, and you just send them the first round pick. But to me, it just makes a ton of sense for all parties involved that this would be the trade. I don't know. That's basically going to be my thoughts on this. What do you guys think? And yeah, the Houston Rockets interested in the Jimmy Butler trade. That's the name of the video. And if you guys made it to the end of the video, let me hear your guys' thoughts. I am going to head out and do this, but yeah, a little video about our boy Jimmy Butler. That's it. I'm gone. I don't know why. But either way, what we're also hearing, Houston Rockets reach the rookie scale extension with Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun before Monday's deadline. That'll likely take the Rockets out of the running of being a cast-based team in 2025. However, that's not stopping the team from dreaming about acquiring a star. Houston might not be ready to make a move this season, but they are monitoring stars for future availability. As previously reported, Kevin Durant's the guy that the Houston love, but another name to watch is Jimmy Butler. Marc Stein of the Stein line reports Butler and the Heat didn't come to an agreement to an offseason extension this year with player option for next season. The Butler's eligible to become a free agent next year. If he opts in and looks for a trade, the scenario is the Rockets become that team to watch. Houston coach Ime Udoka wants to add more veterans. Butler has grew up in the Houston area and would maybe think about a late career homecoming.